I'm with Juan Pablo Raba,
Yes.
and
Yes, sir.
Long Gone Heroes. Really love this movie. Even
Really?
though, yeah, really, it's so intense. I was just thinking, as a movie fan, all of the architectural maps, the how far the how you guys had to walk so many. It seems like it was just physically taxing, just the landscape of this film. Was that movie magic, or was it really physically grueling?
I haven't watched it. So, number one, I have no idea what you're talking about. Number two, all I can talk about is my part of the action, and it was intense. There is hardly any movie magic. Like as I said, I haven't seen the post production, but we shot on real location. Like we were in the jungle, we were in the bridges, we were in the streets. We were shooting, getting shot. Like we were doing it all. It was, but and we had to work at a fast pace. Like this is still an independent film. Like I don't know what the budget is. I'm sure it was a decent budget, but it's not a big action flick. So we were working on a budget, and we were restricted on time, and we had to make it happen. And kudos to John because I think and to our DP and Cox, who was also amazing, because I think they really, made this film look big for what I can see. When I see the trailer, I'm like, damn, this is a big film.
No, this movie really actually, so I've seen it. I think it works. And was a reason why you wanted to be part of this ensemble, this project, was because of John? Because if you look at his movies, he has a very distinct POV, and that's how I feel as a fan. But how about you as an artist?
Precisely. Well, that's exactly what I felt. So when they reached out, I happened to be in Colombia, which is my hometown, but I live in LA. I happened to be in Colombia for another project, and then a friend producer calls and says, like, "Hey, I'm doing a production service for an American film. They need a specific character. He needs to be, speak Spanish with a Venezuelan accent. He needs to speak English. He needs to have, know how to work his way around weapons and stuff." Like, dude, I've done all that. It's great. And he says, and I'm like, "What's the character?" He's like, "Well, I don't really know that much because it's changing because they just finished shooting and they were shooting this initial film initially in Puerto Rico, but now they're going to shoot in Colombia. So the story's changing." I'm like, okay, let's do something. Tell me who's the cat, who's involved, right? And he's like, "Well, Frank Grillo, Bonap, Andy Garcia." I'm like, okay, I like that already. I like Frank. I dig him. I like his martial art thing. He's a hard ass. That's cool. With director, he said, "Well, this guy John Swab," and I didn't know anything about John Swab, so I look him up. I see a couple of trailers. I'm like, this guy has an interesting vision. I want to know it. So we meet at night, and the next week we were shooting in Colombia. That was it. I'm like, dude, I don't know what we're gonna shoot. And if you still ask me what kind of movie did you shoot, I was like, I don't know. I just came in. I had the coolest character intro in my career, that for sure. But I really don't know what we're gonna do. But it was a big collaboration. So we talked a lot with John about that character, about what we wanted to portray. And, there's always, especially in action films, there's always, you could go two routes. You could go, I'm not going to say the easy way because there's no such thing, but you could go kind of straightforward and say, this guy's this, and this is what he does, and that's it. Or you can go through the guy that, who is this guy? Why, why do I suddenly feel that he's a lot more human than he is supposed to be? Why do I feel that actually there is something beneath, the hard ass or the cold blood killer, whatever it is? And that route, I always think it's the most interesting one. It's when you really try to create a multi-dimensional universe around the character, even if you don't have a big chance to do it.
Juan, looking at your body of work, you're talking about the layers of your character. Do you think that's a passion of yours, finding the depth in each of your characters, no matter what the role? And does that spring from your own childhood of just traveling through so many places? And then I was listening to a recent podcast where you're talking about mountain biking, taking new challenges no matter what, and not being complacent. Does that come from that adventurous spirit as a youth, and you keeping that imagination going?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for doing the research. That's really refreshing. Um, yeah, I mean, the deal is, like the straight line is always the fastest way from point A to point B. I can play that. I can do that, but it's just not as interesting. And my favorite part, there's two parts I really enjoy about my job. I would say they might be the only ones I actually really enjoy, which are creating the character, creating that universe, because it becomes an exercise of empathy, right? It's like I have my life could not be more different than that of a mercenary. I mean, we live in opposite sides of the world, right? But suddenly I have the opportunity to play a guy. So how am I going to play him? What am I going to do with him? How am I going to portray a real human and not just a killing machine? I am going to destroy, like I need to show a human. So what do I have? Okay, he's from Venezuela. I live in Venezuela. I know that conflict very well. The conflict is between in the border of Colombia and Venezuela. That's where I live. I live in Colombia. I know the conflict very well. I know how to have my way around guns. I've received military training. I appreciate that universe. I really really am fascinated by the idea. I'm not a gun owner. I know a lot about guns, but I'm not a gun owner. I don't want to be. I have no particular interest in war, but the psychology of a soldier is something that really interests me because these are guys that are willing to give their life not for the country, just for the dude on his right and dude on his left. So that's it. Okay, let's put all this in a melting pot and see what comes out.
One final question, a very quick question, and you talked about the exercise in empathy. Can you just talk about my apologies because my the pronunciation, but Los Hombres Si Lloran? Can you just
Yeah.
talk about that podcast and your venture forward in empathy and humanity? And thank you for your time.
No, no, of course, please. Thank you. Thank you for, as I say, doing your research. That's pretty cool. So 2 months ago, 2 months and a half ago, I launched a podcast called Los Hombres y Lloran, which translates into Men Cry. And I did this because as I am navigating my own personal midlife crisis, which of course involves a bunch of mental health challenges, I discovered that us men, we just don't talk enough about this topic. We don't. For whatever reason, because we were raised that way, or because we think that we're going to look weak and we can never look vulnerable, and there's a whole stream or current in the internet right now of what being a real man is and the way you have to treat women and how you cannot be weak and how you have to be strong, you have to conquer, right? And fight and destroy and be a millionaire. And I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a second, that might work for you, but what if it doesn't work for others? I know it doesn't work for me. I know I like to talk about my feelings. I know that as I was navigating my midlife crisis, and suddenly I'm thinking maybe things are better if I'm not around. I'm like, wait a second, where is that coming from? Like, then this doesn't get better by getting out and grinding, and making the day and making the $1 million. Like, I'm not interested in that. I want to have real conversations with real men about their feelings. Because I'm sure that if we do that and we put these conversations on the table, it's not only going to help men, it's going to help also their women around. So what if a guy who is just so stressed because he can't make ends meet and he doesn't know if he's going to lose the house, what if instead of maybe mistreating his wife or mistreating his children or just going out and finding a mistress or getting drunk or doing drugs or in the worst case scenario, committing suicide? What if this guy just has an environment, a safety net where he can just raise his hand and say, I don't know how to deal with this. I just don't know.
Juan, thank you so much for your time. I've subscribed to the podcast. I love your film. Looking forward to interviewing you for the next one.
Thank you, my man. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure.